Hello, Spectrumites and other people. My name is Forrest, and welcome to episode 2 of The Pancake King, Life and Marriage on the Spectrum. In this podcast, I'm going to give you insights on the autism spectrum, break down some of the myths surrounding it, tell you stories about my experiences on the spectrum, as well as the marriage I have with someone else on the spectrum, and allow you to have a window into my life through conversations I have with friends and family. Most importantly, I hope you learn something from this series, as well as have fun listening to it. In this episode, I'm going to be doing a little bit of narration. This is based on a blog post I wrote years ago about the average experience for me standing during worship at church and how my autism plays a role in that experience. Even if you're not a Christian or you don't go to church, this can be very eye-opening for you as someone who's not on the spectrum, but relatable to you if you are. That being said, let's dive in. My mom tells the congregation to stand, so I stand with everyone else, feeling rather jittery as the words to the first song pops up on the two flat-screen TVs on both sides of the altar. I concentrate on the worship team, my eyes bouncing from each individual team member to the next. I look up at the screen on my left, which makes sense because I'm left-handed. I barely look at the screen on my right. One part of my mind knows that it's time for worship, and transmits some vague thoughts about God, given that that seems like the appropriate thing to do. My lips are moving, and I'm kind of singing, but there's no passion or emotion in my voice. My thoughts of God can't completely dominate my thoughts. My mind is scrolling through too many other thoughts and pictures. I can see glimpses of one of my favorite web shows, Red vs. Blue, playing itself in my head, sometimes the same moment or the same scene over and over again. Many thoughts from a wide variety of different sources play out in my head, and my mind will sometimes go back to previous ones obsessively. Some are made-up scenarios involving myself and other people in my life. I look around at the other people singing. I note their passion as they do, seeing them with their heads lifted, their hands raised. Some are kneeling with their heads touching the floor, some have their heads bowed with their palms open as if accepting something, or wanting something. I look at all of that, and I feel disconnected, unable to find the motivation to imitate them, though a part of me would like to. I look over my shoulder at the people singing behind me, shifting my eyes back and forth so that it doesn't look like I'm concentrating on any specific person. Then I glance at the clock on the wall, an obsessive tendency of mine, no matter the occasion. How much longer was this going to last? The tone of the music shifts, and the worship team has moved on to slower songs. My mind processes the change of tone in the music, and my thoughts slow down at will, transitioning to more somber, quieter scenes. They're still not fully concentrated on the purpose of the moment. My mind forms images that reflects my imagination for certain stories I'm currently working on. My mind decides it's time to continue brainstorming, but because of everything else going on around me, it can't make any progress, leaving me too distracted to worship but also too distracted to think clearly. I shoot a look, sometimes a long one, at the people walking up to the front to take communion. I look every person up and down, and my thoughts continue wandering on their random parade. I shut my eyes to try and concentrate on what's happening presently. It's worship after all. But when I shut my eyes, it doesn't shut out my long string of thoughts. In fact, they can be seen clearer now, causing me to submit to them and cut myself off from reality. The only thing that's noticed is the tone of the music, which determines the pacing and the mood of my thoughts, running rampantly, each visual lasting about 1 second before moving on to the next one, and so forth. There's too much noise. Everyone around me is singing, and I can't concentrate on my own singing. Then worship ends, and I feel a flood of relief as I sit. So this is a good example of how my mind tends to work in a setting, especially in one where I need to pay attention to one specific thing. My mind wanders, it flips channels. I sound old when I say that. It circles around the same moments over and over again. In short, I get very easily distracted mentally, and this is something that's common for people on the autism spectrum. If we look as though we're not paying attention, most likely it's because we're deep in thought. We're hyperfixated on something in our heads, or we're brainstorming. We could be replaying memories over and over again, or rewatching the same moment from a movie over and over again. There's a lot that can be on our minds, and sometimes it's even too much for us to handle. You might be familiar with ADHD, which stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. People on the autism spectrum can actually have ADHD too, or at least similar symptoms. Symptoms of ADHD were actually mentioned on my diagnosis report due to my tendency to, you guessed it, get easily distracted and unfocused. I think having a lot on your mind, though, can be a gift if used right. Of course, I'm going to put a positive spin on this at the end, as I like to do with all these episodes. Having a mind like this oftentimes leads to creativity. Spectrumites with a mind like this are capable of doing the same things as neurotypical people, such as writing books, designing video games, and, well, making podcasts. But they create with an intensity that can be rare, and with a passion that's hard to find. Spectrumites with ideas should never be underestimated. I know I've underestimated my own wife with her ideas. And if you're a Spectrumite yourself listening to this, you have the power to create incredible things. That's what I want to leave you with on this episode. If you're someone on the autism spectrum and you're listening to this, maybe you're in a place in your life where you just don't really feel like you can contribute to the world in some way, that you can't make something that's worth experiencing. Well, you're wrong, so stop. But no, Spectrumites with ideas should never be underestimated. If you're a Spectrumite listening to this, you have the power to create incredible things. And the only thing that can possibly stop you is yourself. KG, what is going on in there?
The armies are coming, Forrest.
Did you enjoy listening to me narrate something to you in a slightly dramatic voice? If so, let me know on my Substack at thepancakeking.substack.com, and I'll consider doing it more often. If you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast, write a review to help the show grow, and subscribe to my Substack to receive updates on new podcast episodes, a new blog post every Saturday, and other content I may put out. You can also check out the entertainment me, my wife, and friends make together on our YouTube channel, Vanzot Productions. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.